Commissioner Gordon, Bane has escaped.
Speed is seductive. It gives the illusion of dominance, of certainty, of control. But what it really delivers is erosion, of precision, of patience, of permanence. Men who chase speed become addicted to adrenaline, not strategy. They want the mountain, but they haven't trained for altitude. They celebrate loud beginnings, but vanish before the ending can be written. That is not conquest, that is noise. To master anything, to truly conquer in this life, you must kill your obsession with immediacy. You must retrain your nervous system to crave longevity more than applause. Because the slow conqueror doesn't just win, he endures. And what endures reigns. The world will bait you with shortcuts, quicker wins, faster paths. You'll see others rise before you and be tempted to mimic their tempo. But speed without depth creates hollow victories. You'll get the outcome, but not the infrastructure. And without infrastructure, every win becomes a countdown to collapse. The slow conqueror plays a different game. He sharpens while others broadcast. He studies while others sprint. He builds in silence because he understands that noise is wasted leverage. And when he finally moves, the impact is irreversible. He didn't just show up, he took root. Patience is not the absence of desire, it's the presence of strategy. It's knowing that any war worth winning requires you to starve your impulse for urgency, to wait not passively but actively, to build while the world forgets your name. Because slow conquest is built in the shadows, while others posture, you plan. While others chase trophies, you forge systems. And systems outlast trends. Systems outmaneuver chaos. Systems don't rely on hype. They rely on mastery. That is the creed of the slow conqueror. Every empire that endured was built brick by brick. Not tweet by tweet, not burst by burst. Time was their blueprint. They did not rush the soil. They waited for the roots to take hold. And that's what modern ambition forgets. That depth must come before display. You're not here to impress. You're here to imprint, to leave a mark that can't be washed away by the next wave of novelty. And that kind of mark can only be made when you've bled into your work over time, quietly, without spectators, without celebration. The slow conqueror becomes inevitable, not because of momentum, but because of mass. He becomes too heavy to stop, too disciplined to derail. His habits are carved into ritual. His foundation is so deep, no storm can collapse it. Others rise through momentum, he rises through gravity. And gravity doesn't shout, it pulls, relentlessly. It is presence without performance. It is power without permission. That's what happens when you master the long game. You no longer compete, because you no longer rush. You dictate the rhythm. But this path will cost you. It will cost you applause. It will cost you visibility. It will cost you the comfort of being seen as successful before you are. You will have to endure being underestimated, misunderstood, mocked for your silence. But silence is not surrender. It's strategy. Every move you don't make is a move you're storing. Every reaction you withhold is energy being redirected into destruction. One day, when your name echoes through halls you haven't even entered yet, they'll call it sudden. But it was never sudden. It was slow, surgical, sovereign. The slow conqueror does not fear time, he weaponizes it. He makes boredom his training ground, repetition his teacher, consistency his crown. He knows that mastery isn't about brilliance, it's about endurance. Showing up when no one claps, refining when no one watches, outlasting when others burn out. You think you need more talent, more luck, more timing, But what you really need is a spine forged in delayed gratification. You want the future so badly that you're willing to be ignored for it in the present. Slow conquest is psychological warfare against impulse, against envy, against the noise that tells you you're falling behind. But behind who? A man who peaked in a sprint, a trend that's forgotten next season. You are not behind, you are beneath. Beneath the surface, beneath the noise, building density, building depth. And when you finally rise, you won't have to announce it. The ground will shake on its own. That's the nature of slow power. It arrives uninvited and cannot be ignored. You must give up your addiction to arrival. There is no summit, only refinement. The slow conqueror doesn't chase an ending, he commits to the process as a lifestyle. He doesn't get there, he becomes the kind of man who belongs there. That shift changes everything. You stop rushing because you stop believing that fast equals better. You realize the man you're becoming matters more than the milestones you reach, and once that paradigm locks in, you move differently. You think in decades, not days. In foundations, not flashes. Friction is not your enemy, it is your instructor. Every drag, every stall, every inconvenient slowdown is a spotlight on something you would have missed if life had moved too fast. You see, when you rush, everything blurs. Momentum can become anesthesia. You don't notice the structural cracks. You don't question the mental inefficiencies. You're too busy moving to realize you're leaking force. But when the pace slows, either by choice or by circumstance, you are forced to face yourself. And what feels like resistance is simply revelation. The system is showing you where it needs reinforcement. Friction is feedback. It's your blueprint screaming, "Look here, right here. This doesn't hold under pressure." If you ignore it, it becomes a collapse. If you engage it, it becomes your next layer of precision. People panic when things slow down. They treat slowness like punishment. They believe progress is halted, that momentum has abandoned them. But slowness is not the absence of motion. It is the birth of mastery. It forces you to stop hiding behind momentum and start examining foundation. What's real? What's stable? What's been carried forward that should have been left behind? Fast builds can't answer these questions. They sprint past the nuances, they skip the depth, but slow work demands examination. And in that examination, you sharpen, not just your process, but your mind. You begin to think like a tactician, like a builder, like a king who's not playing for today's win, but for the throne that won't be shaken a decade from now. Every inefficiency has a hiding place. Rush gives it shelter, but slowness drags it into the open. It reveals the habits you've been justifying, the systems you've been patching instead of replacing, the mindset loops that feel like movement but are actually just motion sickness. And that's the greatest value of slow conquest. It doesn't just demand results, it demands repair, not just of the work, but of the worker. Because a conqueror who can't regulate himself will destroy everything he builds. Speed masks that truth, slow reveals it. When you move slowly, there's nowhere to hide. Your assumptions are tested, your discipline is revealed, your process is exposed, and most people flee at that stage. They'll blame the pace, call it stagnation, call it misalignment, but what they're really rejecting is the mirror. Because slowness holds up a mirror with no distortion. It doesn't flatter, it doesn't edit. It shows you what your speed once covered up. And the most painful part? Realizing that your best work, the work you thought was brilliant, was full of shortcuts. But there is no shame in that, only awareness. And awareness is how you graduate from builder to strategist. To endure slowness without panicking requires identity. You must stop seeing yourself as a doer and start seeing yourself as a designer. You're not building to finish, you're building to last. And lasting work cannot be rushed. If the floor creaks, you don't step faster. You reinforce it. If the door sticks, you don't force it open. You realign the frame. That's how the slow conqueror moves. With diagnostic thinking, with systems-level awareness, with the humility to admit when something isn't functioning, and the maturity to rebuild it without drama. We've been taught to see delays as obstacles, but delay is often divine. It's the universe giving you time to correct what would have failed under pressure. That broken hiring process, that shaky mental routine, that identity conflict you've been masking with productivity, all of it gets surfaced when things slow down. Not to punish you, to save you, to give you a chance to recalibrate before scale amplifies dysfunction. Because once you scale a broken system, the consequences multiply, and most don't survive that. Speed addicts suffer quietly. Their businesses grow, but their bandwidth shrinks. Their reputation scales, but their peace dissolves. Because speed hides problems long enough for you to forget they exist, and when they finally resurface, it's not friction anymore, it's failure. Complete, undeniable, often public collapse. That's what the slow conqueror avoids, not through playing small, but through playing wise, through embracing slowness as a diagnostic tool, not a death sentence. Slowness demands you face the inefficiencies in your character too. Your ego, your avoidance, your self-talk when progress doesn't arrive on schedule. Do you belittle yourself? Do you self-sabotage? Do you pivot prematurely just to feel the rush of starting again? The slow path surfaces all of this. It's a psychological cleanse. You're not just removing inefficiencies from the work, you're removing them from your identity. And identity, once rewired, becomes a lever that compounds for life. Every master learned to sit in friction without fleeing. Every empire that lasted was built during long seasons of slowness. They understood what most never learn, that speed may impress others, but slowness reveals truth. And truth, once integrated, becomes force. A kind of unshakable presence that no amount of flash can imitate. If you can learn to interpret friction as feedback and slowness as strategy, you won't just move differently, you win differently, sizingly, quietly, inevitably. The human brain has limits, not because it lacks power, but because it was engineered for longevity, not frenzy. You can burn hot, but not for long. Studies show that focused cognitive energy starts to decline after just 4 hours of deep work. After that, you're not forging excellence, you're faking momentum. And yet, people worship the all-nighter, the binge, the burnout sprint. They romanticize exhaustion like it's evidence of greatness. But exhaustion is not excellence. It's decay with better PR. The real conqueror does not burn the candle at both ends. He rations the flame. He studies the architecture of his biology and builds around it, not against it. Because he knows conquest requires duration, and duration requires discipline, not of action, but of restraint. The dopamine chaser wants results now. The conqueror wants results forever. That's why he builds with the rhythm of nature, not the tempo of panic. He doesn't measure by how much he can force in a day, he measures by what he can repeat for decades without losing clarity. He understands that real empires aren't built in marathons. They're built in marches. Daily, deliberate, non-negotiable. While the rest of the world tries to sprint through a single week of inspiration, he executes at a pace the mind can sustain. Because sustainability is scalability, and anything unsustainable is unworthy of scale. You think you need to do more, but you need to last longer. You think the world is moving too fast and you must keep up, but the world is cycling, it's repeating itself. And the one who outlasts the cycles becomes the axis around which the next cycle turns. That's the game, the long game. But the long game can't be played with a short fuse. Your willpower is not infinite. Your focus is not mechanical, and the conqueror accepts this, not as a weakness, but as a design. He doesn't fight nature, he aligns with it. 4 hours of surgical focus daily over 10 years will outbuild every scattered burst combined. Pacing is the signature of mastery. It's what separates those who perform from those who last. There is no glory in intensity if it leads to inconsistency. The conqueror doesn't overwork, he orchestrates. He knows that the mind's best work comes from rhythm, not chaos. So he builds a cadence, morning systems, afternoon resets, nighttime rituals. He is boring by design, predictable on purpose because the world is unpredictable enough. His mind cannot be, and in that stillness, that slow, deliberate repetition, he crafts outcomes that others can't replicate because they don't have the patience to maintain the tempo required to generate them. The true metric of power is not how hard you work when you're motivated, it's how steady you remain when no one is watching. The dopamine-driven mind needs a spike to act. The conqueror has trained himself to execute without excitement. That's the shift. That's the upgrade. When the act of showing up becomes automatic, not heroic. When excellence becomes baseline, not breakthrough. And you don't get that from intensity. You get that from design, from engineering your effort around your cognitive thresholds, not your emotional highs. The mind cannot be hacked into conquest. You can trick it, yes, stimulate it, push it, cavitate it. But that's not mastery, that's performance art, and it crumbles under pressure. What survives is the system you can run daily without resentment. What endures is the strategy that outlasts fatigue. That's why the conqueror stops at 4 hours. He doesn't stretch his mind to shreds. He locks it into place and repeat. Because the real power is not what you can do in a day. It's what you can recover from and repeat without degradation. Your heroes are not built by chaos, they are built by rhythm. You look at the greats and think they have more energy, more talent, more fire, but what they really have is recovery, more clarity on when to not push. They don't rely on panic to fuel their performance. They've outgrown that model. They've traded adrenaline for structure. Because dopamine is for those who need a reason. The conqueror doesn't need one. He has a schedule, and that schedule becomes sacred. Don't mistake boredom for failure. The grind of mastery is quiet, monotonous, predictable, and that's what makes it powerful. Because inside that repetition is momentum the outside world never sees. You're not building excitement, you're building compounding returns. And compound interest, whether in money or identity, does not favor the frantic, it favors the consistent. So while others rise and fall with trends and moods, you move forward 1 quiet hour at a time, 4 hours a day, for years. That is how dynasties are born. The conqueror doesn't just think in decades, he acts in days that stack. He doesn't chase moments, he engineers milestones. While others worship the big break, he focuses on not breaking down. That's the paradox. To win the future, you must master the day. To master the day, you must respect the mind. And to respect the mind, you must move at a pace that doesn't erode your ability to keep moving. Every great legacy was built at a tempo the body could sustain and the mind could. You do not become someone new by acting differently for a day. You become someone new by behaving differently for long enough that your nervous system forgets how to go back. That's the truth most motivational noise avoids. Duration is destiny. Behavioral change is not a decision, it's a process, a rewiring, a neurochemical negotiation between who you were and who you claim to be. And that negotiation doesn't resolve overnight. Research shows it can take anywhere from 18 to 254 days for a new behavior to fuse into identity. Not to perform it once, to become it, to breathe it without effort, to embody the upgrade. And in that window lies the war. Between performance, speed disrupts the cycle before it can lock in. You push hard, burn bright, and flame out before the transformation completes. And then you wonder why the old habits return like clockwork, why the change felt real but dissolved. It wasn't false effort, it was fragmented effort. You broke the pattern, but you didn't close the loop. You didn't persist through the repetition required to convince your subconscious that the new version was safe, stable, true. That's what people don't tell you. The brain doesn't believe your change at first. It watches, silently, counting consistency, waiting to see if this is another stunt or the new standard. Patience isn't poetic, it's neurological. The conqueror understands this. He knows every action is casting a vote, and the ballot doesn't get counted after one day or 1 week. Identity is tallied through repetition. Not volume, repetition. Small, often invisible actions performed relentlessly. While others chase transformation through spectacle, he grounds himself in duration. Because he knows that real change, the kind that changes the core, not just the costume, needs time to simmer, settle, seal. Transformation is not a leap, it's an erosion, a daily wearing down of the old identity until it no longer has foothold. That takes patience. And the problem with modern ambition is that no one wants to wait for integration. They want to highlight real, they want instant belief. But belief is earned, not wished into existence. It's earned through days where no one is watching, through choices made when no one is validating them, through mornings where the action feels flat, boring, mechanical, but is still performed. Because that's the forge. And if you don't stay in the forge long enough, you walk out half-formed. Shiny on the outside. Every time you switch routines, chase novelty, or abandon a system early, you're signaling to your nervous system, this is temporary. And temporary behaviors do not reshape identity. They mimic progress. They trick you into feeling like you've shifted. But underneath, the baseline remains untouched. The brain is not listening to what you say, it's watching what you repeat. And when the pattern repeats long enough, the brain rewires. It stops resisting, it stops comparing to the past. It begins to embed the new standard as fact. This is why the slow path matters. It gives the brain time to evolve with you. It gives the body time to synchronize. It allows space for setbacks, for recalibrations, for the rhythm of real growth to take hold. It respects the biology of change, not just the psychology. Because willpower can push you forward, but only structure and time can anchor that push into permanent form. If you want to break the loop and build a new one, you must complete it through patience, through consistency, through ruthless boredom in the name of future fluency. Integration is not linear. You'll feel it some days and doubt it the next. That's normal. The conqueror doesn't panic when belief wavers. He returns to the pattern, because the pattern is the real proof. Emotion lies, discipline testifies, and day after day, vote after vote, the identity cements, until one day you stop trying to be the new you, because you already are. The old you has nothing left to cling to. His excuses don't fit. His instincts don't fire. His story no longer holds emotional weight. That's the end game. Not temporary elevation, but total replacement. The world rewards speed with applause, but the mind rewards patience with permanence. That's why most never change. They chase intensity, they fear boredom, and in doing so, they interrupt the very loop that was meant to set them free. But the conqueror, he does not break the loop. He honors it.